Hello, in this lecture we will continue on our comprehensive problem. We are now going to create the financial statements, being the balance sheet, the income statement, and the statement of equity using the adjusted trial balance over here. So a quick recap of what we have done so far. We have entered the data for the journal entries. So in the journal entry tab, these are going to be the transactions that happen throughout the month of July in this case. We then created the general ledger over here, which created the trial balance. We called this the unadjusted trial balance because we needed to then adjust it as of the end of the time period in order to make the adjusted trial balance, which we will then use to create the financial statements. So on the next tab, we went over to the adjusted trial balance. We took this unadjusted numbers, put those same numbers over here in the unadjusted column, and we used our worksheet in order to adjust those numbers to come up with an adjusted trial balance. We made our adjusting entries as of the end of July, in this case the end of the month, and these are our adjustments. These are now the adjusted numbers as of the end of the month, so these are correct as of that specific date in time, and therefore we can now use this in order to make the financial statements. So we're going to take these numbers, same numbers here, and go to our financial statements tab, and we have the adjusted trial balance here. Same numbers that we were in the prior adjusting entries tab. We can see it in the formula bar. Again, you don't need to know how to do the formula, but that means it's coming from the adjusting entries tab in J5. So these are just the same numbers. We're going to take these numbers and create the financial statements. So I'm going to scroll over here so we can see the full screen. And before we start, we just want to make sure that we understand what we're doing on the financial statements and make sure that we understand that it has to work. And just like when we're making a puzzle, if we put the puzzle pieces out, we need to know and be confident that the thing does work so that we will have the confidence to finish the puzzle. So in this case, we can see that the adjusting basis is shown here by debits and credits, meaning if we add up the debits, we're going to say debit, debit, debit minus credit plus debit minus credit, debits equal the credits. That's what this 0 represents. So the debits minus the credits equals 0. That's one way to say that we are in balance. That's one way to say the accounting equation or the double entry accounting system is in balance. The other way we can say that is, of course, with the accounting equation, where we have assets, which are all the green ones, equals the liabilities, which are all the yellow, and the equity, which are all the blue, both the light and the dark blue. And note that in order to transform that into this numbers statement rather than a debit and credit statement, we had to basically convert the debits and credits to just a simple plus and minus. That's what we're going to do here. The same accounting equation is the same thing that we're going to use in the balance sheet, where we have assets, liabilities, and equity. And of course, the total assets will equal the total liabilities and equity. So all we're going to do is take the one format that we have over here and just kind of puzzle it around as if we were making a puzzle and just make it into a different format where the balancing process is not being shown by debits and credits, but it's being shown by a plus and minus equation. And in so doing, we can then be able to present something like this to individuals that would not know how to use or understand debits and credits. And note over here, I get all the information I need from just looking at this and calculating, okay, there's total assets, here's total liabilities, and so on very quickly. But if we were to present it to somebody else, then we need to put it in plus and minus because the credit doesn't mean anything to most people. So that's the goal. We're going to put it over here. Now I'm going to start off with the balance sheet because the balance sheet is the accounting equation. So I want to show how all these numbers will be in the balance sheet first. Then we'll break out basically the equity section in more detail using the income statement and the statement of equity. Delete that for now. All right, so first thing on the balance sheet is we're going to put the point in time is July 31st, 2000. I'm just going to put X1, and that means that it's as of a point in time. So remember, the balance sheet is as of a point in time. There's no beginning, there's no end. We know we're doing the financial statements for the month, January to the 31st, but the balance sheet only shows the last date. It only shows where we are at a point in time. The story doesn't matter. It just is where we stand as of that point in time. We'll get into the story, the time frame, when we start talking about the income statement and the statement of equity. All right, so within the balance sheet, we of course have assets, liabilities, and equity. We're going to start off with assets, and we're going to break out assets into some other categories, being first, current assets. So I'm going to start off with current assets. And notice we have current assets, and then we're going to type a colon here. So I'm going to type a colon, and that will indicate that there's going to be a group of current assets under current assets. Also note that I'm sticking with the colors here. Obviously, if the colors are too much for you, you could take away the colors on your worksheet. I'm just going to stick with the colors just because, just be consistent with that. So we've got the current assets. Now, the current assets are going to include the cash, the accounts receivable, the landscaping supplies, the prepaid insurance, auto. No, that's long-term. That's a long-term asset. So they're going to be these items here. It's going to be important for us to break out the current assets because we need to compare the current assets basically to current liabilities, meaning assets that are more liquid, assets that can be more easily converted to cash with our current obligations that we're going to have to pay soon. We can't pay our current obligations with an automobile. So that's why we're breaking this out. It's useful for our readers. In order to do that, I'm just going to highlight these. I'm going to copy them and paste them. So I'm going to highlight these 4 accounts. These are our current asset accounts. I'm going to right click. I'm going to copy. We're going to put that in I5. And I'm going to right click and paste it 1, 2, 3. So just the values. I don't want the color there. Just want the values only. 1, 2, 3 values only. And there we have it. Now I'm going to click off it, and then I'm going to highlight them again. I want to indent these. So I'm going to do a little bit of formatting. We're going to learn a little bit of formatting here. So we're going to go to the Home tab. We're going to go to the Alignment group. And if you see this increase indent, we want to select that 1 time. So we're going to show our readers, it's going to be assets, it's a subgroup of current assets shown by the colon, and then we indent showing that we're going to bring these inside. Now I'm going to pull the numbers in. Now I'm going to pull the numbers in to this middle column here, and this will show you why we're using these columns. We're going to subcategorize the columns, and these aren't debit and credit columns. This has nothing to do with debits and credits because there's no debits and credits on the financial statements. We are going to subcategorize the columns using the columns for that reason. So I'm in K5 over here, and we're going to say this equals, and then I'm just going to point to that 6160 and enter. That's what's in the checking account. We're going to do it again. Accounts receivable in K6 equals the 800 and enter. Now we're in K7 equals, I'm going to point to the 50 and enter. And prepaid insurance, we are going to say this equals and point to the 1000 and enter. So there we have those numbers. You might be asking, hey, couldn't we have done that faster? And we could have if we delete these. We could have used the autofill. If you put your cursor on that and you put your cursor right there, that's the autofill handle button, something. And if you click on it, you can drag it down and auto drives it down, and Dr. Phil calculates it and it'll do it for you. That's because of the relevant nature of those formulas, so you want to get used to that within Excel. We're then, of course, going to sum these up, and that will be called total current assets. So we typed in total current assets, and then I'm going to click off it and then go back on it. Notice if I'm still in there typing, I don't have the options of doing anything. Everything's grayed out up here. So if I click off it and then go back on it, or if I'm in it and I hit Control Enter, then I'm on it and not in it. And then I'm going to indent this. I'm going to go to the Home tab. I'm going to go to the Alignment. I'm going to increase the indent 2 times this time. And so now we've said it's a colon, we've subcategorized it, and then we've said the total is going to go out, and we're going to push that out to the outer column. So it's going to look at the format and get used to the format because it'll help you to read financial statements a lot more quickly as well. So if we're indent, we're going to highlight this column and subtotal it out into this column. We will use the sum formula to do that. So in order to put a sum formula, I usually do it this way with an equal sign, then start typing in SUM. And then all these formulas obviously have a sum in them. We want the top one, the main one, the sum formula. And double click on that. And then just highlight the numbers that you want to sum. And you should close it up, but you don't really have to with a shift. And close it up like that and enter. So that's one way to do the sum formula. There's obviously a lot of other different ways. If you go here and you go to the Home tab and you go to the editing group, that's the sum formula there. And you can just click it and highlight. So once again, you just want to draw the box, but you do kind of want to get used to what this formula looks like. Sum of the cell range K5 through K8. It's K5 colon K8. Enter. All right, so we have that. Now, we have the other two assets, and I could say that I want to find a home for these. So I'm going to say, I'm going to put my cursor here and say I found a home by just putting a yellow mark by them and saying, okay, I found a home for all those accounts. And now, of course, well, not for the auto. I'm going to undo that one. We didn't find a home for the auto yet. So we're going to get, okay. So we haven't found a home for these. Once we find a home for everything, by the way, then we should be in balance here. So that's the goal. All right, so now the auto, that's going to be under what we're going to call property, plant, and equipment, the next subcategory. So we'll type in property, plant, and equipment like so, and then we'll have the colon here. So the colon meaning we're going to have a subcategory once again, and we're going to include these items. I'm going to have the auto, the accumulated depreciation, the lawn equipment, and the accumulated depreciation on that. I'm going to copy that, so I'm going to right-click and copy that, and put that under here in I11. Right-click and paste it 1, 2, 3, just the values, not the format. Like so. All right, now while we're still highlighted, while these are still highlighted, we also want to indent that. So I'm going to go to the Home tab, I'm going to go to the Alignment and increase the indentation so that we can see that this is a subcategory. Now, there's kind of some funny thing that happens with the depreciation in that we have these contra asset accounts. That's actually reducing the asset because remember, that's part of the auto. So the reason it's a credit is because it's really the credit half of the auto. So that's actually going to reduce the assets. So I'm going to represent that in our financial statements, not with a negative number, not with a credit or a negative number. We want to represent it, I will represent it with words. So I'm going to say to the reader, less, to tell them it's a subtraction problem. So it's going to be less that on the depreciation. So we're going to do that here too. I'm going to double click on that. I'm going to say less. So it's less the accumulated depreciation. So then we're going to put the numbers in here. So I'm going to put my cursor in J11 equals and point to the auto and enter. Now, if we do that again for the accumulated depreciation, I'm going to select equals and I'm going to point to the 100 for the depreciation, and it puts a negative number in there, which was a credit before. But we don't, even though it's going to be a subtraction problem, I want to represent this as a positive number and tell our reader it's a subtraction problem with the less here in there. So really I want that to be positive. So a couple ways we can do that. I'm just going to show you the long way and then we'll figure it out. If I go up here and I multiply anything times -1, that will flip the sign. So if I want to flip the sign of anything, of course, I can just multiply times -1. If I want to do that a little bit more quickly, I could say, okay, I don't want to multiply times -1. I'm just going to put a negative in front of it. And Excel basically just multiplies it by -1 if you do that. So then that'll flip the sign. And if we want to do that a bit more quickly, then instead of selecting equal, I just deleted it. I'm going to select negative instead of equal and then point to this number. Excel still sees that negative as a function type of input. So it will just calculate it and flip the sign. So in essence, we want a positive 100 that we will then subtract. So now we're going to do the subtraction. Now I'm going to bring the subtraction out into this outer column here in K12. We're going to do a subtraction in Excel. We're going to take the 5,000 minus the 100. So we're going to do that with an equal sign. I'm going to point to the 5,000, then select minus and point to the 100. And then of course when we hit enter, it should calculate to 49. All right, we're going to do that same process down here with the equipment. So we're going to say the equipment in J13 equals, pointing to the 15 in the equipment, and enter. Now, notice we've got this run over here again, and obviously when we print the financials, we should make this cell longer, but for now it doesn't matter that it's there. We're just going to type over it and it'll be okay. So once again, I want to flip the sign here. So instead of hitting equals, I'm going to select negative and then point to that 375 and hit enter, and that should flip the sign. Then we can do the subtraction problem. Now note that this is usually where people get messed up. They don't go the right way. They add instead of subtract or something, and that's when things usually get messed up on the financials. That's usually when people are out of balance, one of the things. So we want to make sure that's correct. So we're going to put our cursor here and say this equals the 15 minus the 375 and enter. All right, and so now we're going to sum this up and we're going to have total property, plant, and equipment. I'm going to put that in the outer column here. So we'll type in total property, plant, and equipment, and then I'm going to indent that. I'm going to go to the Home tab, going to go to the Alignment, then I'm going to go to the Increase Indent 1 and 2 times, and then we're going to go into the outer column And remember, we're not going to do anything with more than one column here. So in this case, it's not like I'm going to jump over here and be adding this up. What we're going to